The 007 franchise and video games are as perfectly well suited as children and nits. There's something about the James Bond universe and gaming that just works. After over a decade-long drought, IO Interactive has come out the gate swinging with 007 First Light. I've just seen the credits roll after approximately 18 hours, so let's talk about it. This is Bin or Win, my version of a review, where I talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and let you know whether ultimately I think it's worth the asking price upon release. That being said, let's get into it. So I'm going to come straight out the gate and just say that I have really enjoyed my time with the game, but it's not perfect. I imagine the developers' number one goal was to make you feel like James Bond. And if that was the case, then they have pulled this off and then some. Whether you're stealthing your way through levels, blending in highly populated environments, disguising your way through restricted zones, bouncing your enemy's head off walls, pulling off headshots, laser beaming people in the eyes with your laser wristwatch, it's all there. Nobody can say that this game doesn't make them feel at least like a badass. And I think it's quite a good blend, good variety of those gameplay styles as well. With a little bit of serviceable driving here and there, but I'll touch on that a little later. So the hand-to-hand combat is personally one of my favorite things about the game. It's extremely dynamic and fluent. It essentially is just attack, dodge, and parry. But the way it seamlessly integrates the environment, the way it is just woven into even the gunplay, the way you can be completely out of ammunition, take down a guy, steal his gun, pop a guy in the head, it just works really well. The gunplay itself is good. There's a handful of guns. I can honestly say I didn't really know even what gun I had at any given time. As long as it shot a bullet, I was just using it. Of course, obviously, if you had a shotgun or a sniper, you could tell. But there are, I think, a few assault rifles, a couple of SMGs, a couple of pistols. But I personally just didn't feel much difference in them, to be honest. And the names are kind of made-up names, and you never really knew exactly what you were running around with. When you're not punching heads in, you're stealthing round, and the stealth, along with a plethora of gadgets, which you get to pick before going into a mission. There's only, I think there's 7. They're all quite distinct and are used for, different situations, different scenarios. But I found that there was just 4 that I found were just good all-rounders, and I used for pretty much the entire story. And this is everything from your watch that just hacks electronics in the environment, all the way up to a bloody missile pen, which is just an RPG in pen form. It makes no sense, but this is James Bond. The enemies themselves are a bit derpy, they're a bit dumb. It's that typical lure them over here or make a noise over there, and they will just go over and have a look, and you just bring them down. And once they lose sight of you for a few seconds, they're, oh, he's missing. So they're not reinventing the wheel or not particularly groundbreaking in the stealth side of things. But it doesn't mean it's not fun. It's the comfortable stealth that we've grown to know from video games. One thing I didn't like was your watch is linked to some contact lenses, essentially. So when you push the button that brings up your gadget wheel, you also have this Q lens, Assassin's Creed kind of eagle vision. And you can't use your gadgets without bringing up that menu. So not only are the enemies pretty dumb, but you can just see them through walls. It's fairly easy to just kind of plan your stealth, move your way through the levels. And again, it's not like you can ignore it, because to distract enemies, to activate bits of the environment, use your gadgets, you have to use this Q lens. So it's popping on and off all the time, and you just know where the enemies are all the time. But where IO Interactive do need a round of applause is their level design. I'm talking visually, I'm talking structurally. Most of the levels are large, multiple route, different ways of achieving your mission, Hitman style, open option kind of missions, which isn't a surprise. Obviously, the developers are the makers of the Hitman series. It's not as in-depth as Hitman. There aren't probably as many options, but there's certainly multiple ways to complete certain missions. And while I said the stealth and the enemies can be a bit dum-dum, these moments really did make me think. You're having to eavesdrop to pick up little bits of intel, talk to the odd person, stealth your way through places you shouldn't be, acquire certain keys or bits of intel. They allow you to access another area. And these are the moments where I thought the game shined, where you are being Bond. You're hiding in plain sight, retrieving intel, being places you shouldn't be. And visually, they're all pretty stunning. Packed with people, packed with optional little bits of info and guidance on how you could possibly complete the mission. And yeah, these were the bits I'd probably say I enjoyed the most, because it's somewhat of a puzzle, There's usually bits of combat sprinkled in. But yeah, hats off to them. Level design, visually and structurally, was top-notch. But again, linking back to your watch and the Q lens, they basically require a resource. Some use electricity or battery charge of your watch. Some use some form of chemical compound. And as you're stealthing around or kind of maneuvering around these big open world levels, you need to use some gadgets to get into certain bits. But you have to constantly make sure you are picking up items to make sure you've got enough resources to use these gadgets. I mean, it doesn't make sense as it is, because you walk past a phone and grab it and somehow charge your watch, but hey, video games. But the resource is so plentiful that it almost just felt pointless. But every now and then you'd realize you didn't have any resource and you had to just quickly backtrack, find some table with a power drill on just to recharge your battery. I just felt like it could have been a recharge system instead of just scattered around pickups, Scattered throughout the story, you've got these kind of high-octane, exciting little drive-in moments. There aren't many. I wish there were more. I actually didn't mind the handling, etc. Some people are slating the driving is pretty poor, I think, for this type of game. It's not an open-world GTA. How much time are they really going to spend on driving physics? It's not a Forza. So, it served its purpose well, and it just kind of refreshed the gameplay loop. And I just wish there were more, and maybe a little bit more shooting. It's not really any of that. It's just driving, Where's the Well, there are a couple of moments I won't spoil, of course, but I just wish there was, I don't know, I was popping oil slicks out the back or firing rockets from under my car. So like I said at the start, it took me around 18 hours to complete. Probably closer to 19, but I jumped into the little tax sim, which is just a little side game mode where you can run simulated missions and you can buy the odd upgrade and what have you. I didn't find myself too interested. There are leaderboards and stuff, so some people are going to probably be into that, but I was there for the story. And the story was good, to be fair. It kept my attention for the whole time. The game does suffer, I think, from some unnecessary bloat. And in some sections of the story, more than others, it's quite obvious. A lot of unnecessary kind of walking around, get to this bit on the other side of the island to speak to this chap, and nothing's really happening in between. Or when you're at the headquarters, there's about 1 million things you can interact with, which is fun, creates backstory. There's lots of little Easter eggs and references to previous Bond films. Now, I'm no big Bond fan. I do enjoy the films, more the recent films. I think the older ones are slightly cheesy. I'm not a hardcore Bond fan, so a lot of them would have went over my head, but there was some that landed, and I appreciate it. But it all just feels like it's there to pad out the playtime. And unfortunately, we do live in a world where people associate the amount of hours it takes to finish a game with value. I personally don't. I'm a quality over quantity type person. I'll take a strong third-person action adventure game over a 200-hour Crimson Desert of mediocre content. I will. But for those who, do find value in time per pound or dollar wherever you're watching, then yeah, it might be a hard sell. I will say there's a handful of boss fights in the game, and they do try to implement some interesting game mechanics. But I always just think with these types of games where you've been one bullet headshotting dozens of enemies How there is a boss that you can't then just do it to. I always think, boss fights in these games don't really work. It seems unnatural and a bit weird. I know that's why they get creative with how you kind of lower their health, etc., or stun them. But yeah, I don't know. For what is a very realistic, well, not realistic, but you know what I mean. You're bringing enemies down left, right, and center, and then you've got somebody with a health bar. It just seems strange. It doesn't quite gel with me. Another thing I will say is the yellow paint. I hope you know what I mean by that. In these AAA, most action-adventure third-person games have a very clear kind of guidance system through the parkour and how way to maneuver and progress through the game. Is so aggressive in this game. It's so clearly obvious just where it wants you to go all the time. Or that if there is an opportunity to acquire some intel when you bring up that Q lens I've mentioned previously, it just tells you, where to go. And it's just hand-holding to a frustratingly high level. And that just comes with the AAA big budget games. I know it does, but yeah, I just wish there was an element of figuring stuff out myself. A little more anyway. It's offensively just climb this, go up here. It's so obvious. I can't express that enough. But we haven't even spoke about Bond himself, the star of the show. He's a new Bond. The actor, Patrick Gibson, I think he's done a really good job. Really good job. Obviously, this is an origin story. He's young, he's confident, he's brash, he's cocky, he's a ladies' man. Everything you would expect from a Bond. He is whipping out one-liners here, there, and it's not too much. His little side, half smile did get on my tits eventually. It's all he does, but I think ultimately he just done a really good job. It must be it's a hard job, let's face it. Of all the characters you can think of, picking a new Bond is a pretty steep task. I wouldn't want to be the guy that had to do that. But to be honest, the acting, the motion capture, voice acting, everything across the board was just really good. There wasn't any just dull, poor voice acting. It was all done to a pretty high standard, to be honest. And I would say that just went for everything in the game. Everything, just graphically, the way it plays, I didn't experience any bugs. It's just a very well done, polished game, which in 2026 at launch, let's face it, is a compliment. It shouldn't be, but it is. But also, just side note, it's just popped into my mind when you are in, gunfire, the bullets are flying, the red barrel placement, and this ties into the kind of, AAA hand-holding. Whoever placing those barrels around is absurd. They're everywhere. Like it to the point where it makes no sense. You could be up against 15 enemies and you could probably pop out 5 bullets. If they all hit a barrel, you've killed them all. It's ridiculous. It makes some scenarios so easy. Cinematic, yes, everything's blowing up. It looks great, but the red barrels, it's absurd. It's crazy. But it makes for good fun. But yeah, wild. But after everything I've just said, for good and for bad, I can't put my finger on it. And it does kill me to say this because I advocate for developers making these types of games, a third-person action-adventure game. It's just my game. That's just what I enjoy. I'll take it over a live service game any day. And although I enjoyed my time with it, and there's far more praises than there are negatives, I can't help but feeling, and it does hurt me to say this, that ultimately, I think it's a bit of a forgettable game. I think it's having its moment now. People are buying it. It's sold well. It's reviewed well. I'm reviewing it well. But it's not going to go down as a great. I don't think it's going to be Uncharted 4 or The Last of Us. And maybe that's down to it is commonly compared and referred to as an Uncharted / Hitman game. And I think that's a fair description of the game. But it doesn't have the cinematic bombasticness and the crazy gameplay and fidelity of Uncharted. And it does have multiple ways, options, open-ended mission design like a Hitman game, but not as in-depth. And maybe that's where it falls. It's doing both, but not to as a higher level as either. And again, it's not at all a bad game. I've really just enjoyed my time. but the asking price is £60 off the PlayStation Store anyway. You can get it cheaper on disc. I ended up doing it through what used to be CD Keys. I think I got it for £45. And I think that's worth it. If it was that much just to everybody, I'd say yes, 100%. I recommend it. And I think ultimately I am going to give it a win. But if you are a person who finds value in the amount of time you're going to get from a game, I'd probably say wait for it to go on offer. If you enjoy the Hitman series, it's going to feel like a softer, toned-down version. If you enjoy the Uncharted series, again, it's going to feel a little... It's not going to blow you away as much, but everything it does is good and to a high standard. But I think now I've completed it, it's just put behind me. You know, like I've completed Uncharted 4. It's one of my favorite all-time games. I've completed it probably 3 times, and it's one that I think I'll just play again at some point. I don't feel like that with this. It was a good experience. It ended. But to sell that to somebody for £60, it's a hard sell, but I am giving it a win because it is just a good, fun game. When you're John Wicking your way through a level, you bounce a guy's head off a keyboard, throw a mug into a guy's face, pop a couple of headshots. It just feels good when you enter a flow state, and there aren't many games that can just pull that off in general. That with a good story, backed up by solid acting and characters, and the introduction to a new young Bond, I think IO Interactive have done a stellar job, to be honest. But let me know what you think. If you're playing it, or you have completed it, just give it a number out of 10. Drop it down in the comments below. Spark a conversation. People who are going to agree, disagree. But that's the name of the game. But you made it to the end, guys. Thank you. Drop the video a like. Consider subscribing, and I'll catch you in the next one.